This question can actually be attacked in two ways. One is the straightforward concept-based attack, and the other a slightly well thought out meaning-based attack. So we'll discuss this first. The concept-based attack that can be applied here is parallelism, because we can see that most of the answer choices have the parallel trigger AND. So this AND becomes a trigger for list parallelism. So we just need to figure out what entities the AND is connecting and whether the connected entities are perfectly parallel. So in the original construction, we have that these analysts agreed that, so we have a that clause construction starting here, that the index, we have a subject, was unlikely a verb, and that that clause starting again, we have a subject and a verb. So A's construction is perfectly parallel, we can hold on to that. Now in B, we have that it was unlikely for the index and for inflation. So what we can understand here is the parallel construction is between the for the index and for inflation. So we can check for the parallelism from this part for the index. So we have a subject and continuing, which is a present participle modifier for the index, and after for inflation, which is the subject here, we have to remain, which is an infinitive. So the subject part is fine, but the present participle and the infinitive, they are not parallel. We can eliminate B. Now what we can catch about answer choice C is this construction of comma with. And I have given a proper explanation to this in question 783, and I request you to check the explanation to get a clear idea of why answer choice C should not work. Simply put, the entities that we have in this clause and this with construction are completely different. Here we have the index and here we have the inflation. These are two different entities, so C goes off. So as I said before, please check out the explanation given for this and you'll get a clear idea of why C would not work in this scenario. I'll also throw a link to this question in the descriptor below. Now in DNA, we see a complete shift that these analysts agreed on the unlikelihood that, now please don't think that this is unidiomatic. This can perfectly work. Agreed on is a correct idiom. And if you can say likelihood that, you can also say unlikelihood that, even though it might sound a little awkward. So let's see what this and is connecting here. We can see that this conjunction and is actually connecting that the index would continue and that the inflation remained. So it's connecting to that clauses. So we have that, and the subject of the that clause, the index, would continue, which is the verb, and that inflation. So once again we have a subject and a verb. Now this might seem parallel, but we have to be a little careful here. Now I'm not saying that verb tenses are supposed to be always parallel or something, but if we understand from the timeline, they agreed. So this is in the past. Now I've already discussed in question 828 about how we can use this would continue, but let me reiterate here. The would is used to talk about a future occurrence from the past. So if these analysts were currently agreeing to something, they will agree that the index will continue to do something and the inflation will remain something. So as I pointed out, we have agreed, which is a clear indication of the simple past. So if we're talking about the simple past, we are reporting their future prediction from the past. So this will would become would, and so will this one. So we can notice that in D, one of them is perfect, but the other one is merely using the simple past tense and that the inflation remained, and that is exactly why this is breaking the parallelism. It would have been fine if it said and that the inflation would remain. So D goes off. Now in E, we can notice that this and is connecting that the index and for inflation. So this is a that clause, whereas here we are using a preposition and a noun. So obviously this is a break of parallelism. We can get rid of E. So this leaves us with the right answer choice, A for alpha. So this was the concept-based attack. And on the other hand, if we go by the logic of the sentence, then we could also pull off a meaning-based attack. Because if you notice in A, the word unlikely is actually here referring only to the index, that the index was unlikely. And the same thing applies for C, that the unlikely is applying to the index. But in B, D, and E, the unlikely and the unlikelihood is now applicable to both the index and the inflation. So if you look at the logic of B, D, and E, the logic would mean that it was unlikely that the index would continue to go up, and it was unlikely that the inflation remains stable. Now look at the meaning here. If it is unlikely that the inflation remains stable, that means the inflation would be very unstable. So if the inflation is going to be unstable, how can we say that the index continuing to go up would also be unlikely? Because if the inflation was unstable, it is very likely that the index would go up or down. And that is exactly why the unlikely should not apply to both these ideas. They should only apply to the index continuing to go up, because it should be said that it is unlikely that the index would continue to go up as the inflation remained stable. So when you think about it by that meaning, again, B would not work, D would not work, and E would not work. And we already understand the problem with the with construction in C, so we're once again back to A, the right answer choice.